Good morning, Sunday, the 7th of June. We're flying through the months, aren't we? We're just disappearing. So here we are up at New Lanark Waterfall, up at Bonington Linn. Beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous. Sun's beginning to shine. I'm a little bit later in starting off this morning because I don't meet for a swim until 9. So I got a wee extra half an hour in the house this morning, which was good. Good morning, Anne. Hope you're well. Morning, Willie. I'm a wee bit later on a Sunday morning because I don't meet up with a group until 9 o'clock for our wild swimming. So here we are. U for unconscious mind, and we're really zipping through the alphabet here. Right, let's get started. Wee shot at the waterfall. Wee quick round of New Lanark. Good morning, Mr. Burrell. Good morning. Good morning. So, we're at U. We're absolutely flying through the alphabet. And I decided to do a wee snippet on the unconscious mind. Goodness, the sweat's flying off me. Morning, Harvey. See you at 9 o'clock. Looking forward to seeing everyone this morning. Right, the unconscious mind. So, I'm going to be really simplistic for those of you that do not understand or have a construct for what that is. Sorry, not that you don't understand it, you just maybe have no need to think about it or look at it or read about it. So it's not that you understand it when you're told about something. You can get a grasp of it pretty quickly, as I've found. Okay, so the unconscious mind was probably first coined by Sigmund Freud, and later on really explored as well by other psychoanalytic, psychodynamic theorists, Jung, William Reich, Ernest Jones, those early pioneers of psychoanalysis. Now, I make no shame in saying that I am Freudian, and if I ever want to indulge my mind, I'll read some work of Freud. So Freud came up with what was called the conscious mind, the pre-conscious mind, coined today as the subconscious mind, but Freud would have called that pre-conscious. So that's the way I learned it. So if I refer to it as pre-conscious, what I mean is subconscious. And then the unconscious mind. And how he came across, how he described this to people was he drew a little diagram of an iceberg. So imagine that you're going up the inner passage of British Columbia or somewhere like that. There's lots of icebergs as you're making your way up to Alaska. You're in the boat and you see the tip of the iceberg. That's conscious. That's what we have as a conscious experience, this wakened experience of what we see. But below the surface of the ocean is those pre-conscious and unconscious parts of the mind. Right? So, as you can imagine, the depth of the ocean is measured in fathoms, and it's very, very deep. So consciously, if you look at that map, that little diagram, let's just say for argument's sake, because the unconscious can't be measured, it's not measurable, but it's under the surface, it's unseen, it's almost the invisible mind. Now, let's just say that our consciousness is about 10% of who we are. So what we look at, how we perceive reality, or how we think we perceive reality rather, is about 10% of who we are. Then we've got our subconscious mind, our pre-conscious mind, and we've got our unconscious mind. So what lives in our unconscious mind? Well, things that we've been talking about through the alphabet: shame, fear, sexual desires, taboos, things we don't want to think about, fears we have around sex, sexuality, anger, rage, murder, feelings of discontentment, feelings of extreme shame, traumatic experiences that happen to us. Now, they get repressed, they get pushed down and not thought about. Simple example of that, you you have an argument with your partner or your other half and you're on your way into the office. Now, you would say, I can't think about this right now. Right, so you're going into the office, you're going into a meeting, you've just had an argument with your wife or your husband. So if that's happened, you would say, I can't think about this right now, I can't talk about this right now, I'll deal with it later on. And what you do is you repress that, you push that to the side, and you walk into the meeting as if nothing's happened. So you put on your corporate hat, and you go in and you act as if nothing's happened. But the fear or the anger or the whatever occurred in that argument gets repressed. So our unconscious mind is probably through the fellowship we have a saying, we all suffer from a disease of perception. Now our perception is very skewed because our perception of this reality, which is conscious, is based on and formed through our formative years of that which is in our unconscious mind, which has been repressed. So a lot of us would repress desires, feelings, rage, anger, jealousy, control, and push that down into our unconscious mind. Now, Freud believed that the reason that it's put in and not brought to consciousness is because it would be harmful or erroneous to us. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think it is harmful to bring that which is unconscious into our conscious mind. Now, we're looking at this particularly through a psychoanalytic lens. Now, I would say that Freud was a genius because in the last 20 years, the developments that we've had in neuroscience have pretty much proven a lot of what he said. It's also discredited a lot of which Freud said, but he was doing the best he could in 1885 or something like that with the information he had. I mean, he was both a genius and eccentric and an addict. I mean, he had a lot of stuff going on himself. He wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a perfect human being. So, getting to grips with, have you ever, it just disconnected there, reconnected. Don't know if you've got me back or not, right? So have you ever, for an example, have you ever been in the company of somebody and they've reminded you of someone, right? Or has somebody's behaviour so somebody that's in your company that might be loud or brash or very quiet, whatever it is, there's something about that person that annoys you, right? So you turn round and say, oh, Anne's really annoying, or David's really annoying, right? But what I would encourage you to do is look at that person and look, A, do you have those traits? Or B, was somebody that was close to you that you have an issue with, or they had power over you, or a parent or a grandparent, did they have those particular traits? And when you see them in someone else, they annoy you, right? It's hard to wrap your head around, I'll say that again. So, have you ever been in company and somebody within that company is triggering you, it's annoying you? So to the degree of the trigger, so if it's a very instant trigger, if you could calculate it between a scale of 1 and 10, 10 being the highest it could possibly be, when somebody's triggering you, okay, to the degree of which they're triggering you, could be an indicator of to the degree of which you have an unresolved issue in that particular area, right? So, what particular behaviour of another person, it's like, how can I say it? I see people saying that Trump's a narcissist. Is he really a narcissist? I would say that he's got behaviours that are not conducive to being a president, but if I actually were to sit down and psychoanalyse him, which I haven't done, is he completely a narcissist? But I've seen many people on Facebook challenging him, calling him a narcissist, calling him this, that and the next thing, when in actual fact, when you look deeper behind their behaviours, they're actually very narcissistic. Okay, morning Leslie, morning Heather, morning everybody. Beautiful morning here, it's absolutely stunning, right? So, that which is not conscious, until it is brought to light, will always rule your life, right? Now, I get involved with a thing called neurofeedback a lot of years ago, and part of that and part of my equipment would measure a thing called galvanic skin response, GSR. And this was an early part of this equipment that Carl Jung used. So Carl Jung would measure it up predominantly to your fingers, little electrodes that would measure sweat, galvanic skin response. And Carl Jung would ask the client a question like, for an example, do you want to kill your father? And the client would say, no, I love my father. Right, and he would say it with such passion, but unconsciously, the machine in the graph would say something very different. So that ignited in Carl Jung some deeper questioning and research, and started to find that, I suppose similar to a polygraph, I suppose very similar to a lie detector, it started to have these pioneers, these early pioneers in psychoanalysis, to start to question these hidden motives, okay? So we're walking about consciously throughout our life, but our unconscious mind, which is underneath the surface, which is 90% of who we are, where there's a lot of shame, guilt, trauma, a lot of unrepressed feelings, as I've said, taboos, sexual desires, fears around sexuality, fears around what we're capable of, fears around our own rage, fears around those murderous primitive instincts that haven't actually been addressed, they've just been repressed. So, as I've said in earlier conversations, and I believe that has been not through any form of attack on the British Empire and the way that we were taught, but they just simply didn't know how to manage these primitive acts of behaviour, and what they did was they had us suppress them, which in a lot of ways has become very dangerous. So let's look at what's going on unconsciously in the world right now. Let's look at what's going on with us unconsciously right now. So look at what's starting to come up, what's starting to come to the surface, and just think and explore on that. You know, something that's needed to be addressed for a very long time, racial inequalities. And, you know, oh, he's a black person or he's a white person. Well, just really a person, isn't it? But, you know, we've got to put this descriptive word on it to give it meaning. And look at what's starting to come up in our planet right now. So what's happened is, through COVID-19, in my understanding, right, as I theorise in my walking in the morning, right, so we've been going along, we've been zooming along, mostly unconscious, right? We don't think about what we're doing, we're just acting unconsciously. You know, you get in the car in the morning, you know, have you ever been driving along and think, goodness, I completely missed that village out, right? You were away in another world, but you didn't whack the car, you didn't write the car off, right? You didn't kill a pedestrian, because you're running around doing all your behaviours from an unconscious perspective. We're not being conscious. I mean, even taking this back biblically, if you look in the Bible, there's me banging on about the Bible again, well, it is Sunday, but Jesus said, you will be condemned for your idle words, right? How many of us say things on a day-to-day basis without actually being mindful of it, without actually coming from our prefrontal cortex, right? Speaking from a mindful perspective, right? We're just rambling out a load of words to get us to where we think we need to be. We've got this feeling that we're on a hamster wheel, because we are on a hamster wheel. We're on a hamster wheel of our unconscious mind, which is driving our motivations, which is driving our behaviours, and very, very few people are actually conscious. What would the world look like if we were able to increase the conscious capacity of how we linguistically communicated with the world, and how our actions were more mindful? So these old scripts and schemas, and I'm pointing to the back of my head there, they're not necessarily all coming from your cerebellum or your reptilian brain, but they're coming from a part of the mind which is they're not formulated in the prefrontal cortex. So when you hear people talking about mindfulness and the power of now and being present and all that kind of jazz, right, all that funky stuff, that's because we're up here in our prefrontal cortex. Keep it very simple, and our left occipital in the prefrontal cortex, right? So, gosh, that opens up a whole other conversation about consciousness. I just went off on one there between the cortical and subcortical regions of the brain and how they communicate in the white matter. It's really complicated in what is consciousness. Nobody fully understands what consciousness is. It's still a very new and emerging sense. So even some of these things that I'm talking about might change over time. And there's some people out walking here. Good morning. How are you? What, are you scared? Come on, Ralph. Good morning, how are you?
Any better, I'd burst. Watch
Any
out.
better, you'd burst. I love it. How are you this morning? Any better, I would burst. Love it. I'm just... Enjoy your walk. I'm doing a wee vlog.
That's all right. I've just been speaking to my mother in Australia. So,
Cool. Where in Australia are you from?
Brizzy, dump. You never get there. You haven't missed the thing.
All right, my dear. Enjoy your walk. Mind your feet. Have a great day. Yeah. Wow. Awesome. What a really nice lady. How are you today? Any better, I would burst. Bang. Awesome. Now, where was I? Off in one there. Tangents. Yeah. Jesus says, you will be condemned for your idle words. Right? It's in the book. It's in the Bible. Been talking about our unconscious programs because we're not conscious. I mean, I think about this quite regularly as well. Doing a wee bit of preaching because it's Sunday in the Bible, right? So look at the Romans. Look at what they did to Jesus. Right? They put him on a cross and put nails through his hands and through his feet, right? Now, people that were coming from a mindful, heartfelt perspective, and were, all reading Eckhart Tolle's stuff and the power of now and all that, and they were in their hearts, would you put nails through somebody's hands and feet? No, you wouldn't, right? Now, when Jesus was hanging there, I love this quote, and he said, Father, he looked up to the skies and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Right? So I think Jesus was onto this as well. And I think Jesus was, I think he was a yogic master, Kundalini yogic master, who had found the ways of quantum physics and managed to manipulate his reality in ways that science is not yet able to caught up with him. But to bring that into our conversation, how many of us are doing actions, talking about people, speaking about people behind our back, not being conscious, being nasty, hostile and erroneous to other people, punishing people, punishing our partners for not being good enough, when in actual fact, it was something. I'm stuck on a tree, right? So, unconscious. See, a lot of people are tuning in and tuning out of this. It's interesting stuff, right? So, until we can make what is unconscious conscious, our unconscious will be constantly ruling our life. Now, how do you get an understanding of an invisible mind? A mind that's not explored, that you can't just open a door. Well, you can, but the methods of that aren't. They're still pretty frowned upon within Western culture. They are making progressions with that, but because of the judgments that's placed on it, I won't be speaking about them on live. But how do you start to bring those feelings conscious? Well, start to look at the projections that you're putting onto your world. Start to look at where you're pointing a finger. So one of the quickest ways to do it is look at where you're pointing a finger, and there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. Biblically, how can I take the speck of dust out my brother's eye when I can't take the plank out my own? Right? He who has no sin cast the first stone. Right? So we love pointing fingers. We love pointing fingers at people. And, a lot of people, look at how exhausting this is. Look at how exhausting it is keeping all that energy that's buried up in our unconscious mind, all those taboos, those sexual taboos that we have, those primitive sexual urges, those primitive murderous urges. It's like we're all really, really nice people. Right? We all walk about and we manage to navigate this reality, this system that's been enforced upon us in order to be, in inverted commas, good people. Right? Watch what any of us would do, or the thoughts that we would have if somebody messed with our children. Right? All of a sudden we go from being quite conservative, sort of half-decent people, to being absolute animals. Right? So that's the stuff that's buried in our unconscious mind. But why is that dangerous? It's dangerous because it's repressed. It becomes less dangerous when it's accepted, spoke about and brought into the light. Right? So look at the level of disconnection that we've got going around. Look at the amount of people that are presenting to the world that they're really good people. They go into the office and everybody thinks they're great, they're the life and soul of the party, but they're actually battering hundreds of drugs at the weekend, right? They're drinking like a fish, and they treat their wife like a skivvy. Or indeed, they're the husband. The wife's out all the time with her pals, spending shitloads of money on her credit card, trying to fill this void inside herself. This is all unconscious. The void is in the unconscious. And how do we bring some level of awareness to that now? It's massively much more complicated than that, but that's a wee snippet into the unconscious. And I would encourage anyone to start looking at where is your unconscious mind. Where is your unconscious mind actually running the show? If you're suffering from any fatigue or tiredness or anything like that, yeah, of course it could be something to do with your nervous system. But in actual fact, if it is something to do with your nervous system, what was pre-nervous system? What's in the unconscious mind, and how is the unconscious mind communicating with an unconscious nervous system that's then showing up cognitively and consciously? But because it's invisible, how can any physician ever find out that that's what that is? Now, Freud's work was phenomenal in hysteria and working with hysterical patients back in the day. And basically it was quite simple what he did. He listened to people. We don't have time to listen to people any longer and what they're really actually saying. We're in a prescribing culture. Just fling medication at them. When in actual fact, each of us have been on a trek to Everest Base Camp, haven't we? From when we were born. A girl, Nadia, that I've connected with on Facebook, from a village where I come from. And as I was talking about one of those things about shame, and about my mum used to say to me, you know, bad boys will go to that home. And in actual fact, I was driven to that home in Carluke and parked outside it. And Nadia came in and wrote a wee message and said, oh, I know, it was so confusing. My dad used to drive me down to the home and park outside it, and we made a little joke. Wouldn't it have been funny if we were both sitting out at the same time with our parents telling us, if you don't behave, you're going in there? Right, so we were trained like Pavlov's dogs, like behavioural psychologists have studied. How were we trained to behave? Well, most of us, and most of the people I know, were trained to behave through fear. It was fear-based. That's locked in our unconscious mind. Look at the level of fear that's running the show. So we're trying to get into being more love, more oneness, more unity, living from a more unified field of consciousness. But how can you do that when deeply buried in the basement, in the corner of the basement, in the far corner of the basement, there's nothing but fear? We're a terrified community. We're a terrified nation of people. Yet we're being called to move towards moving into our heart. So how do we move into our heart and let go of that fear? Well, we've got to shine light in it. We've got to go down into the basement. We've got to turn the light on. And we've got to start to look in those far-reaching corners of our mind and start to bring those stuff to the surface and have a non-judgmental witness and a place where we can safely share and do that. But how can we safely share and do that when we know our own mind and we know that we're looking at other people and going, oh, look at his hair. Christ, hasn't he lost his hair? God, look how much weight he's put on. Mind going at 100 million miles an hour, right? Thinking everybody's anything from a pain in the arse to an overweight, unfashionable reptile, right? So then we go into a room and we expose our deepest, darkest secrets. But because we're aware of our own mind and our own judgments, we're looking around about us thinking, is everybody in that room's going to be judging us exactly the same? But really, how can we do somebody else's thinking for them? So really what we're basing that on is we're basing that on our own mind. It's and in our own thinking. So how can we ever trust a group or another person to expose ourselves to when we don't trust ourselves? So pull back the projections, and anywhere that you're judging the external world, you're sitting in these conscious thoughts that are playing out continually, looking at the outside world as being wrong or flawed, is simply because there's somewhere inside ourselves that we feel that we're wrong and that we're flawed. Right? Gosh. The unconscious mind is it's fascinating. It's a whole lot more complicated than what I've given it credit to. You've got the id, the super id, the ego, the altered ego, etc, etc, etc. Now, I'm not making light of it, but we've got like 20 minutes in the morning to kind of rattle through these A to Zs, again, with everything. I'm not speaking at this for an ivory tower. Do your own research on it. And in areas when you work with a good hypnotherapist, that's a good hypnotherapist. I'll repeat that, a good hypnotherapist. Somebody that's actually probably spent 3-4 years studying hypnotherapy, not 2 days in a hotel somewhere, right? My mind just can't wrap my head around that. You know, we're looking to, well, you know, it's phenomenal in this popular pop psychology, you know, these popular psychology movements, and people are getting given massive amounts of information without any foundation. It's just beyond me. And, you know, I really cannot wait for the day that the BACP, the British Association of Counsellors and Psychotherapists, will regulate coaching. Because right now, anybody in their auntie, Ralph, my dog, he could put a wee sign on his neck and go, I'm Ralph, I'm a coach, right? I am sorry, I'm going to say this publicly, 2 days in a hotel, right, in your city, doing some basic training in neuro-linguistic programming or coaching and learning rapid response hypnotherapy or whatever they're calling it now. They're making up fancy, even more elaborate names for it. I'm sorry, you're not a therapist, right? You shouldn't be working with people. And I'm having more damaged people coming through my doors because they've worked with these kind of people that, I'm sorry, are not qualified. Now, yes, life skills are qualified, and life skills can be a qualification for people, but if you're going to be looking at the unconscious mind, and you really have to choose very, very carefully what model of psychology or psychotherapy that you're going to go into. And it's not CBT. It would be psychodynamic or psychoanalytic. I very much doubt there's very few psychoanalytic psychotherapists in Scotland compared to you know, your 2-day coach people, right? So if you've got something that you believe is very deeply rooted in your unconscious mind, and that's playing and showing up in your life, get the appropriate help that you can. Do not just go diving deeply into it, and do the best you can with it. I would really encourage that. Do your own research, get yourself some effective help. I'm not a qualified psychoanalytic psychotherapist. I've studied psychodynamic theory and I love it. That's my main model. Absolutely do love it. Do I feel completely and utterly equipped to manage people with trauma? Yes and no. I judge and doubt myself quite considerably, but the you know, getting yourself into effective psychoanalytic psychotherapy, the old-fashioned stuff on a couch, lying back, free association, and really allowing your unconscious mind to start to come up to give you a sight of it is phenomenal. It's a fantastic gift to give yourself. So I would encourage anybody to do that. Do your exploring, and if you do your exploring, get one of the wee headlights, right? Put it on your wee cap before you dive into your unconscious mind, and make sure you've got loads of batteries and a really bright light. Enjoy the journey and take care. Have a fantastic Sunday. See you tomorrow. All the best. God bless.